this debate. But can I start by saying to the last speaker, his speech was factually, morally and intellectually wrong on all counts. And one day, when we look back, he will be judged on that. Mr. Speaker, this was a budget which was extremely important for New Zealanders at an extremely important time. It was full of hope and it was full of direction, and it was delivered to help us get back onto an even footing so that we wouldn't end up like the countries overseas that the members opposite seem to want us to be like so much. It will do a number of things. It will reform some outdated tax credits. It will abolish some issues around herd valuations on farms. It will make some important, and I say important, changes to the student loan scheme. Mr. Speaker, what this will do over 4 years is save $349 million for New Zealanders so that this government can reinvest that in more productive areas of our economy. And I say to the members opposite, if they believe that we shouldn't be passing this legislation and we should be borrowing that extra $349 million, give up your seats, get off the list, get on the plane, go to Greece.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, here we are on the dead of morning and the morning after Budget Day, urgently taxing toddlers. Urgently taxing toddlers. It is so important that we've suspended the budget debate, suspended the normal business of the House, suspended all select committee process, imposed retrospective tax legislation to turn the country around. On whom? Paper boys and paper girls are going to be pickpocketed by this government. It is so laughable, so risible, so pathetic that it would be funny if it wasn't so sad. So sad because, as the nation's press has woken up, imagine the feeling in the government's procedures room this morning, confronted by the headlines in the country's largest newspaper, a big, fat, zero budget, zero ideas, zero hope, and in the nation's capital, this charming photograph of the most important feature of the budget, or charming cartoon, which is what the government is doing to the nation's children. Is their best idea really? Is it really to take the nation's paper boys and shake their pockets? Shake their pockets. Look at them squirming. Look at them squirming. I almost feel sorry for them. But I say almost because I am looking at such charming ministers as the Minister of Health and the Minister of Police, and the feeling has strangely left me. The feeling has strangely left me. Mr. Speaker, before the budget came out, there was speculation in the media that there were going to be some major, what they call, base broadening measures. And this was an important little narrative for the government to get out because, of course, Labor's pro-growth tax reform had been courageous and well received by both the business community and the general press. Labor campaigned in the last election on a pro-growth capital gains tax that would get money going where business investment needed it, and on an R&D tax credit. So this budget was National's answer. And they let the media know there were going to be pro-growth, base broadening measures, and here it is. Taxing toddlers by going for the pockets of paper boys and paper girls. Well, isn't that just amazing? Mr. Speaker, the centrepiece of this budget is raiding the piggy banks of 68,000 kids. Hardly strategic, hardly fair on some of the lowest earning people in the country. But as I said yesterday, the test of a budget is not only what's in it, and I think we've got common ground now, and by the time we've got to the third reading of this debate, that part of this bill is just a joke. But we haven't spent as much time talking about what else is in the bill, and I think in fairness to the government, it's appropriate to mention the two other significant, well, that might be overstating it, the two other measures in the bill. Now, the first one you might call the David Bennett special. There's a new member from the Waikato, relatively new member who's come here to earn a decent living, sustained only by the 3 dairy farms that he's had to disclose in the pecuniary interest register. And one wonders how such a young man has come into such largesse. and I now understand it. I mean, taking him as, not his personal finances, of course, that would be inappropriate, but taking that kind of thing as an example, I dare say it wasn't because he was a paper boy when he was at school. Rather, I suspect as a savvy Waikato accountant, he has made an art form of precisely the provision which it has taken this government 4 years out of shame now, 4 years to fix. How do you like this, mum and dad worker in our cities? If you're a farmer, a dairy farmer, and the market is rising, you can classify your cows as capital so you don't pay any tax on them when the price goes up. But if the price starts going down, you can reclassify them as revenue and claim a tax loss on them. And then when the market goes up, what do? Classify them as capital, so you don't pay tax. Why not? Because we have no tax on capital or capital gains. Maybe that explains why a new member from the Waikato comes here with a mere 3 dairy farms in his back pocket. How come it took 4 years for the modicum of justice on that outrageous rural rort to be closed down? On that part of this bill, I actually agree with the government, but I say, why are we doing this in year 4 when it should have been done in year 1? That's appalling. That is appalling. Now, here's the next bit. What National did do when they come in was their little Christmas present for the trust fund babies. You know, the trust fund kids we were hearing at breakfast are so outraged they're going to march on Parliament. That there's going to be a new group set up called the Trust Fund Babies Action Group, TFAB. TFAB, the Trust Fund Babies Action Group, are going to be marching against this last part of the bill. Now, I don't want to put too much weight on it, but here is the thing. The repayment bonus on the student loan, if you paid it off fast because you had millions in the bank, say you came from a dairy farming community and you could afford to pay off your student loan, well, that would have been great. And you got a bonus from the government for doing it. If you happen to be on the bones of your bum doing a paper round, which they're now taxing to get by, or when I was a student, pulling drinks or working in a shearing gang, you didn't get the bonus. Well, thank God that's been closed down. That was a national initiative that was driven by greed and did not work. And now they've had to admit it. So those are 3 things in this bill. The first one is a joke. The second one is 4 years too late. And the third one only corrects a mistake that they cravenly made themselves in the first year. So what is not in the bill? That's just as important, isn't it? What is not in this bill? Because this is the budget tax legislation. My colleague rightly said, pro-growth tax policy. Where is it? The elephant in the room. How can New Zealand be having a zero budget and asking for real cuts in the health system? Massive health cuts coming. Tony Ryle knows it. Why we're getting increased class sizes, why we're going to be 1,000 teachers short. And as Annette King knows, why we are cutting back on the provision of housing when we have a housing crisis around the country, and the government is sitting on their fat bank balances, and doing nothing about capital gains. Nothing about capital gains. Why is it that of the 100 wealthiest New Zealanders, only 50 are on the top tax rate at all? Because they have capital gains tax-free, and because they use all those fancy accountants' tricks like trusts and fancy company structures, and they do that to avoid paying tax. Pro-growth tax reform would tax capital gains, and it would sort out the trust rorts. Is there any of that in this budget? No. Why? Why are we taxing paper boys but not the big end of town? Oh, because they're too busy having private dinners with the Prime Minister like Sky City Casino when the member for Vodafone puts up his hand, Sam Motuaringa, who as Deputy Chair of the Commerce Committee took an all-expenses-paid tour to Australia courtesy of Vodafone to see the footy. Wasn't that good judgment? Wasn't that good judgment? It's going to take a wee while to live that one down, but there's a much more important issue here. A much more important issue here, which is this. We had a proper transparent tender around that conference centre. Labor doesn't think it's the be-all and end-all, but at least there was a transparent process until one party had a private dinner with the Prime Minister and he then intervened to stop it. Mr. Speaker, that's no way to run a country. That's no way to run a country. You end up looking like a banana republic. Mr. Speaker, back to the bill. There are 3 measures in the bill. One of them is a joke. The second one is late. The third one corrects a mistake of National's making. What is not in this bill? Proper, thoroughgoing capital gains taxation and pro-growth tax reform around R&D tax credits and other measures to correct what are the big holes in the tax system. Mr. Speaker, this is at best a wasted opportunity, and for once I agree with the New Zealand Herald. It is our big, fat, zero-hope budget.
Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr.